Cloudtts. Walking in the Footsteps of the Buddha. Author Thich Nhat Hanh. Book 3. Chapter 63. All the Way to the Sea. During his travels, the Buddha stopped in the village of Alavi. The Buddha and 8 bhikkhus were offered a meal in a public building there, while all the local people were served food as well. Following the meal, the Buddha was about to begin a Dharma talk, when an elderly farmer, almost out of breath, entered the hall. He was late because he'd had to search for a lost water buffalo. The Buddha could see that the old farmer had not eaten all day, and he asked that rice and curry be served to the old man before he would begin the Dharma talk. Many people felt impatient. They did not understand why one man should be allowed to hold up the Buddha's discourse. When the farmer was finished eating, the Buddha said, "Respected friends, if I delivered a Dharma talk while our brother was still hungry, he would not be able to concentrate. That would be a pity. There is no greater suffering than hunger. Hunger wastes our bodies and destroys our well-being, peace, and joy. We should never forget those who are hungry. It is a discomfort to miss one meal, but think of the suffering of those who have not had a proper meal in days or even weeks. We must find ways to assure that no one in this world is forced to go hungry." After Alavi, the Buddha followed the Ganga northwest towards Kosambi. He paused to watch a piece of driftwood being carried downstream. He called to the other bhikkhus, pointed to the piece of wood, and said, "Bhikkhus, if that piece of driftwood does not become lodged against the river bank, if it does not sink, if it does not become moored on a sandbar, if it isn't lifted out of the water, if it isn't caught in a whirlpool, or rot from the inside out, it will float all the way to the sea. It is the same for you on the path. If you don't become lodged against the river bank, if you don't sink, if you don't become moored on a sandbar, if you are not lifted out of the water, if you do not become caught in a whirlpool, or rot from the inside out, you are certain to reach the great sea of enlightenment and emancipation." The bhikkhu said, "Please, Lord, explain this more fully. What does it mean to become lodged against the river bank, to sink, or to be moored on a sandbar?" The Buddha answered, "To become lodged against the river bank is to become entangled by the 6 senses and their objects. If you practice diligently, you will not become entangled in feelings which result from contact between the senses and their objects. To sink means to become enslaved by desire and greed, which rob you of the strength needed to persevere in your practice. To become moored on a sandbar means to worry about serving only your own desires, forever seeking advantages and prestige for yourself while forgetting the goal of enlightenment. To be lifted from the water means to lose yourself in dispersion, loitering with people of poor character instead of pursuing the practice. To be caught in a whirlpool means to be bound by the 5 categories of desire, being caught by good food, sex, money, fame, or sleep. To rot from the inside out means to live a life of false virtue, deceiving the Sangha while using the Dharma to serve your own desires. Bhikkhus, if you practice diligently and avoid these 6 traps, you will certainly attain the fruit of enlightenment, just as that piece of driftwood will make it to the sea if it overcomes all obstacles. As the Buddha spoke these words to the bhikkhus, a youth tending water buffaloes nearby stopped to listen. His name was Nanda. He was so moved by the Buddha's words that he approached the bhikkhus and asked to be accepted as a disciple. He said, "Teacher, I want to be a bhikkhu like these brothers. I want to follow the spiritual path. I promise to devote myself to studying the way. I will avoid becoming caught against the riverbank, sinking, becoming moored on a sandbar, being lifted from the water, becoming caught in a whirlpool, and rotting from the inside out. Please accept me as a disciple." The Buddha was pleased by the young man's bright countenance. He knew the young man was capable and diligent, although he had probably had little or no schooling. The Buddha nodded his acceptance and asked, "How old are you?" Nanda answered, "Master, I am 16. Are your parents living?" "No, Master, they are both dead. I have no other family. I take care of a rich man's water buffaloes in exchange for shelter." The Buddha asked, "Can you live on just one meal a day?" "I have been doing that already for a long time." The Buddha said, "In principle, you should be 20 years old before being accepted into the Sangha. Most young men are not mature enough to live the life of a homeless monk until they are at least 20. But you are clearly special. I will ask the community to waive the usual requirement in your case. You can practice as a Samanera novice for 4 years before taking the full precepts. Return the water buffaloes and ask your master's permission to leave his employment. We will wait here for you." The youth replied, "Master, I do not think that will be necessary. These buffaloes are very obedient. They will return to the stable on their own even without my assistance." The Buddha said, "No. You must lead them back yourself and speak to your master before you can join us." "But what if you are gone by the time I return?" The Buddha smiled. "Do not worry. You have my word that we will wait here for you." While Nanda led the buffaloes back to their stable, the Buddha spoke with Svasti. "Svasti, I will place this young man under your care. I believe you understand best how to guide and support him." Svasti joined his palms and smiled. Venerable Svasti was 39 years old now. He knew why the Buddha wanted him to be young Nanda's instructor. Long ago, the Buddha delivered the sutra on tending water buffaloes, after being inspired by his friendship with Svasti when Svasti was a buffalo boy like Nanda. Svasti knew he could guide Nanda well on the path. He knew that his closest friend, Venerable Rahula, would assist him also. Rahula was now 36. Svasti's siblings were all grown with families of their own. The hut they once shared had long since perished. Svasti recalled with a smile the visit he made to Uruvela 1 year with Rahula. It was after Rupak had married and moved to another village. At that time Bhima and Bala still lived together and supported themselves by making and selling cakes. Bhikkhus Svasti and Rahula walked to the Neranjara river. Svasti had not forgotten his promise to give Rahula the experience of riding on a water buffalo, and so he called to some young buffalo boys who were grazing their buffaloes near the riverbanks. He asked them to help Bhikkhu Rahula climb onto the back of one of the great beasts. At first Rahula hesitated, but then he removed his sanghati and handed it to Svasti. Rahula was touched by how gentle the mighty beast was. He shared his impressions of the leisurely ride with Svasti, and he wondered aloud what the Buddha would think if he could see him. Svasti smiled. He knew that if Rahula had remained in the Sakya palace to one day become king, he would never have enjoyed this water buffalo ride. Svasti returned to the present moment just as young Nanda arrived. That night he shaved Nanda's hair and showed him how to wear the robe, carry the begging bowl, walk, stand, lie down, and sit as a mindful bhikkhu. Nanda was mature and diligent, and Svasti enjoyed helping him. He recalled how some years ago, 17 young people had been accepted into the Sangha at Bamboo Forest. The oldest boy, Pali, was 17 and the youngest only 12. They were all from wealthy families. When Pali asked his parents to allow him to become a bhikkhu and they agreed, 16 of his friends implored their parents to let them do the same. Once they joined the Sangha, they were expected to follow the life of a bhikkhu, including eating only one meal before noon. The first night, several of the youngest boys cried from hunger. When the Buddha asked the next morning why he heard children crying in the night, he was told about the boys being accepted into the community. The Buddha said, "Henceforth, we will accept only young men who are at least 20 years of age into the Sangha. Children cannot be expected to live the life of a homeless monk." The boys were allowed to stay, but the Buddha asked that those 15 years old and younger be given an additional meal in the evening. All the boys remained bhikkhus. The youngest one, Svasti realized, was already 20 now. Chapter 64. The Round of Birth and Death. One day, while sitting in Besakala Park in Samsumarajiri, the Buddha spoke to the bhikkhus, "Bhikkhus, I want to tell you about the 8 realizations of great beings." Venerable Aniruddha has spoken about these 8 realizations before. They are the realizations taught by great beings to help others overcome forgetfulness and attain enlightenment. The first realization is the awareness that all dharmas are impermanent and without a separate self. By contemplating on the impermanent and non-self nature of all dharmas, you can escape suffering and attain enlightenment, peace, and joy. The second realization is the awareness that more desire brings more suffering. All hardships in life arise from greed and desire. The third realization is the awareness that living simply, having few desires, leads to peace, joy, and serenity. Living simply allows for more time and concentration to practice the way and to help others. The fourth realization is the awareness that only diligent effort leads to enlightenment. Laziness and indulging in sensual desires are obstacles to the practice. The fifth realization is the awareness that ignorance is the cause of the endless round of birth and death. You must always remember to listen and learn in order to develop your understanding and eloquence. The sixth realization is the awareness that poverty creates hatred and anger, which in turn create a vicious cycle of negative thoughts and actions. Followers of the way, when practicing generosity, should consider everyone, friends and enemies alike, as equal, not condemning anyone's past wrongdoings or hating those who are presently causing harm. The seventh realization is the awareness that although we dwell in the world to teach and assist others, we should not become caught up in worldly matters. One who leaves home to follow the way possesses only 3 robes and a bowl. He always lives simply and looks at all beings with the eyes of compassion. The eighth realization is the awareness that we do not practice for our individual enlightenment alone, but devote our whole being to guiding all others to the gates of enlightenment. Because these are the 8 realizations of the great beings. All great beings, thanks to these 8 realizations, have attained enlightenment. Wherever they go in life, they use these 8 realizations to open minds and educate others, so that everyone may discover the path that leads to enlightenment and emancipation. When he returned to Bamboo Forest in Rajagaha, the Buddha was informed that Bhikkhu Vakali was gravely ill and hoped to see the Buddha before he died. Vakali's attendant came to see the Buddha. After bowing 3 times, he said, "Lord, my teacher is very ill. He is staying in the home of a lay disciple who is a potter. He asked me to come bow before you in his place." The Buddha turned to Ananda and said, "We will go at once to visit Venerable Vakali." When he saw the Buddha enter the room, Bhikkhu Vakali made a great effort to sit up. "Please, Vakali," said the Buddha, "don't try to sit up. Ananda and I will sit close by the bed on these chairs." After he and Ananda were seated, the Buddha said, "Vakali, I hope your strength is improving and that the pains in your body are easing." "Lord, my strength is rapidly declining. I am most uncomfortable. The pains are growing more severe. I hope then that you do not suffer from any worries or regrets." "Lord, I do suffer from worries and regrets." "I hope your regrets are not about violating your precepts." "No, Lord, I have observed my precepts fully and feel no shame." "What then do you worry about and regret?" "I regret that, due to my illness, it has been a long time since I have been able to visit you." The Buddha gently scolded, "Vakali, do not worry about such things. You have lived a blameless life. That is what keeps teacher and student close. Do you think you need to see my face in order to see the Buddha? This body is not important. Only the teaching is important. If you can see the teaching, you can see the Buddha. If you can see this body but not the teaching, it is of no value at all." After a moment of silence, the Buddha asked, Vakali, do you understand how impermanent the body is, mine as well as yours? Lord, I see that most clearly. The body is constantly being born, dying, and transforming. I see how feelings are also impermanent, constantly being born, dying, and transforming. Perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness follow the same law of birth and death. All are impermanent. Before your visit today, I contemplated deeply on the impermanent nature of the 5 skandhas. I have seen that there is nothing in the 5 rivers of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, or consciousness that contains a separate self. Wonderful, Vakali! I have faith in you. Nothing in the 5 skandhas contains a separate self. Open your eyes and look. Where is Vakali not present? What is not Vakali? The wonder of life is everywhere. Vakali, birth and death cannot touch you. Smile at your body comprised of the 4 elements. Smile even at the pain rising and falling in your body. Tears glistened in Vakali's eyes and he smiled. The Buddha stood up and took his leave. When the Buddha and Ananda were gone, Vakali asked his friends to carry him on his bed to Isagili mountain. He said, "How can someone like me die in a room? I want to die on the mountainside beneath the spacious skies." His friends carried him to Isagili. That night the Buddha meditated deep into the night. In the early hours of the morning, he told a number of bhikkhus he met near his hut, "Go visit Vakali and tell him there is nothing to fear. His death will be peaceful and blameless. Tell him to put his heart at rest. I have great faith in him." When the bhikkhus found Venerable Vakali Isagili, they told him they carried a message from the Buddha. Vakali said, "Please, friends, lift me off this bed and place me on the earth. How can I lie on a high bed while receiving the Lord Buddha's words?" They did as he asked and then repeated the Buddha's words. Vakali joined his palms and said, "Please, brothers, when you return to the monastery, bow 3 times to the Buddha on my behalf and tell him that Bhikkhu Vakali is deathly ill and in terrible pain." Vakali sees clearly that the 5 skandhas are impermanent and without a separate self. Vakali is no longer bound by the 5 skandhas. In his last moments, Vakali has released all fears and worries. The bhikkhus said, "Brother, ease your heart. We will return and bow 3 times to the Buddha and speak your last words to him." The bhikkhus were no sooner out of sight than Bhikkhu Vakali passed away. That afternoon the Buddha climbed Isagili with several bhikkhus. The blue sky was cloudless. Only a thin strand of smoke curled up into the sky from a hut at the foot of the mountain. It drifted for a moment and then vanished. Looking at the vast round sky, the Buddha said, "Vakali has been liberated. No delusion or phantom can disturb him now." The Buddha again travelled, this time to Nalanda and Vesali. One day, at the Kutagara monastery in the great woods, the Buddha told the bhikkhus, as living beings, people have to suffer, more or less. However, those who devote themselves to the study and practice of the Dharma suffer much less than others, because they possess understanding, the fruit of their practice. That day it was still very hot, but the Buddha was seated with his bhikkhus in the shade of many beautiful sala trees. He picked up a small piece of earth, held it between his thumb and forefinger, and asked, "Bhikkhus, if we compare this piece of earth with Gayasisa mountain, which is larger?" "Of course, Gayasisa is much larger, Lord." "It is like that, O Bhikkhus. For those who have arrived at understanding thanks to their study and practice of the Dharma, their suffering is almost nothing compared with the suffering of those who are submerged in ignorance. Ignorance magnifies suffering by millions of times. Bhikkhus, suppose someone is struck by an arrow. He will feel pain. But if a second arrow strikes him at the very same spot, the pain will be much more than just doubled. And if a third arrow strikes him at that same spot again, the pain will be 1,000 times more intense. Because ignorance is the second and the third arrow. It intensifies the pain. Thanks to understanding, a practitioner can prevent the pain in himself and others from being intensified. When an unpleasant feeling, physical or mental, arises in him, the wise man does not worry, complain, weep, pound his chest, pull his hair, torture his body and mind, or faint. He calmly observes his feeling and is aware that it is only a feeling. He knows that he is not the feeling, and he is not caught by the feeling. Therefore, the pain cannot bind him. When he has a painful physical feeling, he knows that there is a painful physical feeling. He does not lose his calmness, does not worry, does not fear, and does not complain. Thus the feeling remains a painful physical feeling, and it is not able to grow and ravage his whole being. Bhikkhus, be diligent in your practice of looking deeply so that the fruit of understanding may arise, and you will no longer be bound by pain. Birth, sickness, old age, and death will also stop bothering you. When a bhikkhu is about to pass away, he should dwell in the contemplation of the body, the feelings, the mind, and the objects of mind. Every position and every act of the body should be placed under mindfulness. Every feeling should also be placed under mindfulness. The bhikkhu contemplates the nature of impermanence and the nature of interdependence of the body and of the feelings, so that he will not be bound by the body and the feelings, even pleasant ones. If he needs all his strength to bear the pain, he should only observe, "This is a kind of pain that needs all my strength to bear. This pain is not me. I am not this pain. I am not caught by this pain." The body and the feelings are, at this moment, like a lamp whose oil and wick are running out. It is by conditions that the light manifests or ceases to manifest. I am not bound by conditions. If a monk practices in this way, calmness and release will come. When the first rains began to relieve the summer heat, he returned to Jetavana for the retreat season. He taught the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis more about the law of dependent co-arising. One bhikkhu stood up and asked, "Lord, you have taught that consciousness is the basis of name and form. Does it then follow that the existence of all dharmas arises from consciousness? The Buddha answered, that is correct. Form is an object of consciousness. The subject and the object of consciousness are two faces of one reality. There can be no consciousness without the object of consciousness. Consciousness and the object of consciousness cannot exist independently of each other. Because the subject and object of consciousness cannot be separated, they are both said to arise from mind. Lord, if form arises from consciousness, consciousness can be said to be the source of the universe. Is it possible to know how consciousness or mind came to be? When did mind begin? Can one speak of the beginning of mind? Because the concepts of beginning and end are only mental constructs created by the mind. In truth, there is no beginning or end. We only think about beginnings and endings when we are trapped in ignorance. It is because of ignorance that people are caught in an endless round of birth and death. If the round of birth and death has no beginning and no end, how can one escape it? Birth and death are only concepts created out of ignorance. To transcend the thoughts of birth and death and beginning and end is to transcend the endless round. Because that is all I wish to say today. Practice looking deeply into all things. We will speak again about this subject another day.